They don't know if that 5,500 is right. They don't know what's supposed to go in which boxes, and they don't care because they're trying to run their business. Hello, and welcome to the Fiduciary Wise podcast. I am Marta Hurst, one of your hosts from Fiduciary Wise. Whether you're a thought leader, service provider, CEO, or decision maker, this podcast is for you. We break down best practices, the services and solutions available to you, discuss the latest topics, and shake up the industry norms. Join us as we explore, challenge, and navigate the future of fiduciary responsibility together. Well, hello, my fellow hosts of the podcast. I am very excited for season 3. So I am Marta Hurst. I've spent about 20 years in the retirement plan industry, 17 on the TPA side before I became a partner here at Fiduciary Wise. This year, I am the co-chair of the Women in Retirement Conference. So that is through ASPA. I'm excited about that. And then, of course, I'm a partner here at Fiduciary Wise and director of fiduciary governance. So I spend a lot of time in retirement plans. I love what I do and am excited to share this season with you guys.
Thanks, Marta. And I'm Kate McBride, an ERISA 402A specialist at Fiduciary Wise and an ERISA Advisory Council member at the Department of Labor. And I've been in this business for much longer than I want to say, but I've had experience on the investment side for quite a few decades and the retirement side for a couple of decades. So we want to let you know how to think about some of the things that crop up on for fiduciaries to plans and maybe give you some insight on ways to make your plan better or where to get help with your plan.
Hey, Kate. Hey, Marta. Isaac Wood. Excited to be back for another season here of the Wise Fiduciary podcast. I am an ERISA 402A specialist entering my second year at Fiduciary Wise. Can't believe time flies over here in the fiduciary world. I've got 15 years of experience in the financial industry, 8 of which of those was specifically on the record keeping side. So come from that in my background. I'm not nearly as dignified and designated and qualified as Marta and Kate, as you heard, but I do have a passion deep inside of my DNA for helping 401k plans be as efficient as possible, optimizing 401k plans for plan sponsors and their employees. So I'm excited to step into our conversation today because this is one that we come up against probably every single day. So excited for another season, excited for this episode, just bubbling with excitement over here to talk about fiduciaries.
Look, bubbly. That's the word I always use to describe you. I am excited to get started. So season 3, here we go. One of the most common questions that we get is, how are you different than a 316? Or even literally this morning, somebody said, can I get a 316 quote? And I said, yes, with our 402, because that is really the heart of what we do. And 316 is just kind of a little bonus where it needs to be. So that 402 gets a lot of confused looks. And even some of our partners who have worked with us for years, when they hear 316, they think of us and don't really think about the difference between 316 and 402. So we wanted to start this season talking about the differences between 316 and 402. And then this season we'll be getting into some examples and just kind of seeing how the 402 side of things works.
Hi, I'm Kate McBride with Fiduciary Wise. We know that managing retirement plans comes with a lot of responsibility, and having the right knowledge is crucial to making the best decisions for your plan and participants. That's why at Fiduciary Wise, we don't just provide fiduciary services, we're committed to educating those who manage retirement plans through resources like the Fiduciary Wise Brief. Our program delivers expert insights to help you navigate the complexities of ERISA, compliance, and the fiduciary risk management. If you're finding value in what you're hearing in this podcast and want to take your understanding to the next level, let's continue the conversation. Reach out to us at fiduciarywise.com/scheduling and learn how we can support you with the knowledge and tools you need to confidently manage your plans.
I guess let's start with the question of why should people even care about fiduciary services? I know with some things that are happening currently with the Trump administration, and this is not a political discussion, but there are a lot of people being cut from positions. So regulatory enforcement had really started moving into smaller plans. I don't know with the staff changes, we'll call it, in government departments, what that's going to look like. But I do think plan sponsors are looking for ways to offload their fiduciary responsibilities, and also have somebody do some of these things for them because they just don't understand what they need to do by no fault of their own. I mean, they're trying to run their companies and do the thing that they are an expert at, and retirement plan, all of it can sometimes be overwhelming. I know we talked a little bit about 316 and we do often. And Kate, you made a really great point about 316 service providers, that they're not always the same. The services you get from one aren't always the same as the others.
Yeah, and I think, there are a number of reasons for that. Part of it, I think, is that there's overlap from different service providers. So, for instance, there are things that the trustee might do that you might consider would be a 316 service. But if the trustee is already doing that, then the 316 service provider won't overlap that, won't do that. And there are a number of things that the 316s do. But if there is that overlap, you don't want two entities doing the same thing. You want to delegate the right thing to the right group. So, so there are a lot of, I think, maybe misconceptions about 316. And also, I think there might be misconceptions about 402A. I think a lot of people still don't really understand what an ERISA 402A named fiduciary really is. And so just maybe to start at that sort of basic concept, it is usually it is the plan sponsor's role for running the actual plan. And most plan sponsors, believe it or not, don't even know the term 402A named fiduciary, even though it says that they are it in the plan document. And so it is, I think, maybe a confusing role because it's really not that discussed that often under, most brokerage or even RIA circles. I think there just isn't that discussion of the 402A named fiduciary. There are very few firms that actually take that on, like Fiduciary Wise does. But the 402A named fiduciary is typically the plan sponsor, and they're typically doing, the 80 or so tasks that need to be done every year. Or maybe they don't know what those tasks are, so maybe they're only doing 30 or 40 of them, or 10. We don't know actually, if all of those things are getting accomplished. And it's not the plan sponsor's fault because they don't have a list generally. They don't generally know what they're supposed to be doing. They get advice, they get some help from whoever is advising them on the plan and from their service providers, but they may not know what they're supposed to be doing and what they may be missing doing. And that can impact plan participants.
And the reason that plan sponsors don't know is that they're not in this industry. Your average plan sponsor is not in the financial industry, not ERISA experts, and so they are beholden to what experts tell them. And for so many years, the one person that they talk to about their retirement plan has been their investment broker, their advisor on the plan, right? And so from an education perspective, when the word fiduciary sort of came out of the toothpaste bottle, so to speak, a couple of years ago, it's always been around in ERISA, but in the financial industry, in the investment world, the word fiduciary came out. And so advisors started talking about the word fiduciary. And as we saw on our chart earlier, there's multiple different fiduciary roles that ERISA designates on a 401k plan. The one that advisors are most familiar with is that investment advisor. Being either a 321 or a 338 investment advisor. That's their comfort zone, what they're able to talk about. In that space, you either are or you aren't the 338 investment advisor. It's very much a box that either has a check in it or it doesn't, right? And
Right.
so as the conversation over the last 5 or 6 years has then transitioned, we see these administrative firms offering fiduciary services. That conversation has been had in a very similar way, where they look at 316 is the 338 of administrative duties. And so they approach it as just, let's just put a check in that box. But the way it plays out is that there are dozens of 316 administrative duties that any given administrative firm can do one or two of and put on their marketing material that they're providing 316 limited 316 services. And they're not lying. They are doing 316 services, but it's just a different conversation than the 338 conversation that plans had finally gotten their arms wrapped around. And so the 316 conversation before we get to 402A is kind of the wild, wild west. So it's important to ask, what are the 316 duties that you're performing? And are you taking the responsibility for doing those? Or are you just doing the duties? In the 316 world, there's two roles of 316. One is the responsibilities, and then one is the risk, taking on the responsibility of doing those responsibilities. And so to know what you're getting in the 316 space is hard because everyone puts together their proposals. There's lots of different service providers that will claim that they're doing 316, and they are, but to what scope are they providing the service is a very important question to ask.
So relative to that, I have an example. So there's a service provider who shall not be named, and we had a call with them recently with a client because they wanted to cover their 316 services. Now, Fiduciary Wise provides 316 fiduciary services where it's not being done. So I was like, all right, well, let's entertain this, because a lot of people, when they think 316, and I think one of the reasons it's popular is because they give you a laundry list, right, of the stuff they're going to do. We're going to mail your notices. We're going to approve loans and distributions and things that are kind of a headache for employers. So I think that there's a great opportunity to get some of those services. But we got on the phone with this service provider who said, oh, we'll sign your 5,500, which signing the 5,500 is a fiduciary function. Fiduciary Wise does that for our clients. So I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I'm
When you
not
sign
going
the
to arm wrestle somebody on a
5,500,
phone call.
you're conceivably taking responsibility for what's on the 5,500, that it's right and correct.
Correct. However, this particular service provider, when we got on the phone and I said, well, tell me how this works, because they also were completing the 5,500. And then they said, well, then we will sign off on it. And I said, well, that is super. But there was a step in the middle where they sent it back to the employer to certify that it was correct before they signed it. So the employer would have gotten their name off the 5,500, although they have Fiduciary Wise, so they did anyway. But the liability wasn't really shifting. Not really. It wasn't shifting at all, because they were still asking the plan sponsor to certify that the information on the 5,500 was correct before they would sign it. That's kind of contrary to what I think of when I think of signing the 5,500. Yeah, I don't want my name out on EFAS, but also maybe not me in this example, but other employers, they don't know if that 5,500 is right. They don't know what's supposed to go in which boxes, and they don't care because they're trying to run their business. So I think that 316, again, they are providing those services and they said that they would sign, but they weren't limiting the liability of the employer by doing that. They were just literally taking their name off of it. So I think it depends on what the employer wants, and are they getting what they think they're getting? Because to your point, Isaac, there's a lot of okay, well, we're doing this, but we're not doing this, and what we call limited scope, 316.
Hey, I'm Isaac Wood with Fiduciary Wise. With years of experience helping plan sponsors, TPAs, record keepers, and advisors navigate the complexities of retirement plans, I understand that every client has unique needs. That's why our MEP, PEP, and DC group of plan services offer complete customization. Whether you're managing multiple plans or looking to streamline administration, we tailor solutions that fit your goals while also ensuring compliance with ERISA regulations. At Fiduciary Wise, we don't just offer cookie cutter options. We work closely with you to design a plan that maximizes efficiency, minimizes risk, and gives you the control that you need. Imagine the confidence of knowing that you have an experienced team behind you, guiding you every step of the way. If you're ready to take your retirement plan to the next level, let's connect. You can schedule a meeting at fiduciarywise.com/scheduling to see how we can help.
So then when you move into 402A, there is no limited scope 402A. The 402A
The scope
is
much
the
bigger.
responsible. Yeah, much bigger.
Scope.
Yeah.
Much bigger. Yeah. 316 is here and 402A is here.
Right.
Yeah. So when you look at this chart on the screen, this shows a picture of all the different fiduciary roles inside of a 401k plan based on ERISA, right? And so all fiduciary roles are broken into three buckets. There's a legal bucket, there's an investment bucket, and there's an administrative bucket, right? So we're in the financial industry, we're most familiar with the investment bucket. That's where that 338 and then your 321 shows up. And that's also where your investment advisor, your broker of record, that's where those educational services show up in the investment bucket. The legal bucket is your plan sponsor, your trustee, the documents that govern the plan. And then the administrative bucket is what we're talking about in the 316 space, right? A lot of the work that your third-party administrator would do on the plan, the testing of the plan, the approval of loans, the money coming in and out of the plan, right? Very, very much the administration of the plan. So when you think of a 316 fiduciary, the 316 fiduciary stays in that bucket. But there's two other buckets that a 402A named fiduciary, the named fiduciary of the plan, is responsible for oversight. And so the 402A named fiduciary, they're not responsible for executing all of these tasks that show up on the right-hand side of this chart, right? Just because you're the plan sponsor, you're not responsible for executing all of the duties under the plan, but you are very much responsible for oversight of those duties as they are executed. And so whether they know it or not, every single 401k plan has a 402A named fiduciary. And
that might surprise
otherwise
people.
Stated, it's the plan sponsor.
Yeah. The plan sponsor doesn't realize necessarily that they are the 402A named fiduciary with all of that fiduciary liability on them. And it's very easy for a plan sponsor not to know what they need to do and skip something inadvertently and get in trouble. And so it's, I think, important to point out how when that responsibility and liability shifts from the plan sponsor's shoulders to a 402A, a professional 402A named fiduciary firm, Fiduciary Wise, then that responsibility, that liability, all of that's on that plan sponsor's shoulders, and most of the tasks that they have to do every year that they may not even realize they have to do shifts from their shoulders to a professional 402A named fiduciary, Fiduciary Wise. And that is a big step for a plan sponsor, because that means they're not only shifting all those tasks, 80 something tasks, but the liability that comes with doing all those tasks correctly and making sure that they haven't missed any of them. And so that goes to Fiduciary Wise, and the plan sponsor is left with 5 tasks. And that is a kind of a big deal.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts about our 402A story today? I think it's super important to realize that, the 316 is a small component of it. They are a fiduciary or can be. Those tasks are important. So we are not saying that they're not, just like a 338. Any kind of fiduciary that can be involved in your plan is helpful to offset some of that liability, assuming that it is structured correctly. But there is much more to a plan than just a 338 fiduciary or just a 316 administrative fiduciary. The 402A is just, as Kate said, it's just bigger than that and covering all of the aspects. So when you're talking with clients or if you have your own plan, be thinking about those 3 different areas of ERISA and how all of those are important to running a plan, not just the investments, although I think that's what we hear about the most, not just the administrative fiduciary, not just your CPA audit. It is important that whoever is managing the plan is familiar with all of them, has expertise in those. And if you don't, that's okay, because you can hire somebody that does.
not only can you hire someone that is an expert, ERISA actually says that they expect you to. ERISA calls out like, hey, these are the fiduciary responsibilities inside of a plan. We are putting these in place so that we can be comfortable that this plan is being operated and executed in the very best interest of the participants and their beneficiaries. Okay, we expect there to be experts that fill these fiduciary roles, and they actually say in ERISA that if you, as the plan sponsor, are not an expert in any of these areas, we would expect that you would hire an expert so that this plan is operated at the highest standard under the law for the benefit of these participants and their beneficiaries. And so ERISA actually expects, for the longest time, we've thought that it's just so unfair that the plan sponsor is responsible for all of this because they're the one person in the room that hasn't been educated in any of this, right? Marty, you've taken tests. Kate, you've taken tests. I've taken tests. Your advisor takes tests. TPAs are required to take tests. There's all this testing to be experts, to be qualified in the space, and the plan sponsor, who's in charge of it all, is required to take zero education. But it's done that way because ERISA doesn't expect them to maintain that role. They expect them to hire an expert to fill that space and to execute the plan. And so not only can you hire that, ERISA expects that if you're not the expert, that you would bring in an expert. And part of the reason that 402A is so unknown in the space is that there's not very many experts in that space. There's not very many fiduciary wises out there. And so the conversation is not being had. But what we're hoping is that those listening to this podcast will start having that conversation, educating plan sponsors that not only are you're responsible for this, but you don't have to be. And so bring in an expert to take care of this, to manage this 401k plan, and to make sure that you have the pieces in place, the experts in place to make this plan as efficient as possible for your employees. And so ERISA never expected you to be doing it all. It's like the automotive industry never expected you to fix your car every time it breaks. There are experts out there. You take it to an expert and they fix it. And so that's the way commerce works. And so that doesn't change in this fiduciary space. And so we want to have this conversation. It is very much the conversation that we have on the sales front all the time, where there's confusion because there's lack of awareness that the 402A named fiduciary even exists. So if you don't know it exists, how can you know that there's a solution out there? And so you start just lopping everything into the most recent conversation, which is a 316 conversation. So we're slowly as an industry becoming more and more fiduciary cognizant and aware. And so as that continues to expand from 338 to 316, now out into the 402A space, it's just better for the marketplace that everyone knows what ERISA requires of them.
I was thinking when you were talking about, I wish that people thought about this more like they did the medical industry. Like if my daughter broke her arm outside, I wouldn't be like, well, I think I can probably find a YouTube video and do this myself. I would take her to somebody who knew how to fix it. And that is the case with retirement plans. A lot of people just try and do it on their own. And it is there is more to it. There's more than one YouTube video. There's more than our podcast worth of information to consider.
It's a complicated thing to run a plan. And I think that most plan sponsors don't realize that when ERISA came to be and 401ks were added to that it was never expected that the plan sponsor was going to be running that plan. It was expected that, like a pension plan, it would be professionally run. So a professional fiduciary would have run that plan. And back in the early 80s, when they started to actually put 401ks into a corporate setting and corporations started to sponsor those, they weren't expected to run that plan. They expected that, just like the pension plan, they'd have a trustee or another expert in that seat running the 401k plan. And it became a little bit expensive for them to have both a pension plan, a 401k plan, so it was permitted for them to run that 401k plan themselves. But I have always wondered why. Why was that? And it really was not ever meant to be that way. It was meant to have a professional running it. Why? Because if you have a professional that is knowledgeable about your plan and how it's supposed to go, you're going to have a better plan. And that's, that's good for everyone. It's good for every employee, and it's good for, the people who run a company. It's just better to have a professional do that job. It's a complicated job.
So I think we are kind of landing at an important point, Kate, and you mentioned, the job of the plan fiduciary is to do what's in the best interest of the participant first and foremost. And if you are running a retirement plan and you do not have expertise, that cannot be in the best interest of the participant. So there are options out there, and Fiduciary Wise is certainly one of them. I have enjoyed spending time with you today, Kate and Isaac, and thank you to everybody who tuned into the Wise Fiduciary podcast. We love to hear your thoughts, your questions, so please drop us a comment, send us a message, or you can schedule a meeting with us if you'd like to talk more with us at fiduciarywise.com/scheduling. So don't forget to join us next time for more insights and discussion. We have a very exciting, I think, season coming up. So we look forward to you tuning in. Thanks so much, and see you next episode.
See ya.